Hello everyone, my name is Erin and I'm the designer of the 2016 Block of the Month, and this month we are going to make a string star. And this is what it looks like. You use a template and some narrow scraps of fabric, and you sew those narrow scraps of fabric onto the diamond template, and then you sew those diamonds together, and that ends up being the block. A note, I have uploaded the template to the website. It's going to be under the 2016 Block of the Month tab. When you print that out, there's going to be a mock-up of what the block is going to look like. Be sure that when you print that out, that mock-up measures 3¼ inches square. That's just going to ensure that those diamonds are the correct size, and you will come out with the correct size block at the end of all of this. So what is a string quilt block? Well, these blocks are assembled using a simple type of foundation piecing. You'll also hear the method referred to as string piecing and string quilting. String quilts are named for the strips of fabric that are used to make a quilt, the strings. The strings are sewn to a permanent foundation such as muslin or paper. So here's a few examples of some string quilt blocks. The one on the left is creating using some selvages. These selvages nowadays are they have a lot more design to them than they used to, and they're much more prettier. So why just throw that away? There's a trend that has been going on for a while that people have been making quilt blocks using those selvages. So this is an example that you can do. And then the other two blocks that you see are just other examples of string quilt blocks. And just like usual, I'm going to show you some quilt variations using the quilt block that we've made. Now, just for simplicity for my quilt design software, I made the string block the same, like all the diamonds are the same. They used all the same fabrics. That was just for ease of design. My final version ended up being a lot scrappier than this. You can decide to do either or. If you like the uniformity of this one, feel free. If you like the scrappy version, feel free. So here the quilt block is in a 4 blocks across, 4 block down arrangement. Here it is separated with just a narrow sashing. Here it is separated with a narrow contrast sashing. Here's the block on point. And here's the block on point with all of the blocks filled in with the quilt block. Here it is on point with all the blocks filled in by the quilt block and some sashing. And here it is with just some contrasting cornerstones. So your cutting instructions. There's not really a whole lot of measuring for this quilt block. The only measuring that you're going to really have to do is for these first 2 square cuts. The first is 4 3/8 inch squares in background fabric. And then you're going to also have 4 3 3/8 inch squares in the background fabric. You're going to need a handful of the 1-inch strips in the background fabric. You're going to need assorted 1-inch strips of scrap fabric, and then a handful of 2-inch strips of scrap fabric. Now, what exactly is a handful? Well, it depends on the length of the fabric that you have. If you say your background fabric scraps are, I don't know, the width of a bolt of fabric, then you'll probably just need 1 strip of that 1-inch strip of background fabric. It all depends on what you have. Again, there's not really a lot of measuring in this portion, and you'll see why. So taking a 1-inch white string, you're going to line up the edge of the string with the diamond points on the wrong side of your paper template. When I cut this piece of fabric that you see in this photograph here, I basically just laid the piece of fabric over the template and then just used some scissors to cut the width that I needed. I didn't measure, I just eyeballed it, and I worked with it that way. You're going to want to secure that white piece of fabric to the paper somehow. You can use a pin, you can use a washable school glue stick, you can use fabric glue. Any of those will work. Just make sure that you secure it to your template at some point. And then you're going to take that first scrap string, do the same process of laying it on top of the template and just trimming it so it's easier to work with. And then you're going to line it up with that white string. You're going to use a short stitch length. I used 1.5 millimeters, and you're going to sew a 1/4 of an inch seam. Once that seam is sewn, you're going to press it open, and then you're going to follow that same process to continue to add strings to cover that left-hand portion of the template. Once that left-hand portion of the template is almost covered, I find using a 2-inch string to cover the point of the diamond is a lot easier. And so you'll just follow that same process of lining it up with the edge of the previous scrap, sewing using that shorter stitch length, pressing up, and then you're good. So when half of the diamond is full like this, you're just going to continue that same process for the second half, putting the scrap piece of fabric on the previous string, sewing, pressing open. Continue, continue, continue. Now once the entire diamond is filled, you're going to flip it over to that wrong side, and you'll see here on this template there is a bold line of the diamond, and then there's a lighter dotted line. That lighter dotted line is just the seam allowance, and you're going to cut the template out to that part, that lighter dotted line. You're going to repeat all of that to make 8 total diamonds that look like this. Now take all of the squares that you cut out in the beginning, and you're going to cut those in half on the diagonal. And then you're going to take all of your completed diamonds and arrange as desired. You're going to want to make sure that you don't have 2 fabrics that are similar or the same next to each other. And once you've come up with a pleasing arrangement, you're going to sew the large and the small triangles onto each diamond. Now you're going to create 2 different types of diamond triangle units. You're going to create 4 that look like the one that's in the top right, and 4 that look like the one in the top left. Basically, when you sew those large and small triangles onto the diamond, when the block is finished, those large triangles are going to end up in the 4 corners, and the small triangles are going to end up in the middle center of the block. If you have any questions, look on the template. There's a mock-up of the block, and you'll see how things are arranged. So once you've created 4 of each of the diamond triangle units, you're going to take those units and sew them together. And you may find the process that we used in last month's, I think it was last month's Black of the Month, where we used foundation paper piecing, lining up the portions that you want to make sure are very precise on that seam. So where the diamonds meet, sewing a long basting stitch length on there to ensure that it's the point is precise. And then once you're happy with how it looks, using the shorter stitch length to sew the entire seam. So once those are sewn together, you're going to press them open, and you want to make sure that to reduce your bulk, you press your seams open entirely. And then you're going to create 4 quadrants of this diamond triangle square unit. So once you have 4 of those, you're going to line those back up again, and you're just going to treat it like a 4 patch. So you're going to sew the 2 components in a row together and press your seams open, and then you're going to sew the rows together. And you can continue to follow that process of using a clip or a pin to ensure that your points are precise, using that long basting stitch length, and then sewing with the shorter stitch length once you're happy with the placement. And so that is our completed block. if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us via our website, which is www.ipscork.com, or because I am going to be leaving the Southern Branch of the Irish Patchwork Society when I move back to the United States later this summer, you can reach me personally at eksrn2002@gmail.com if you have any questions. If you end up emailing the corkips@gmail.com, those will get to me as well. So please let me know if you have any questions. And we have one more next month to just finish out I'll have the finished quilt, and we will have the instructions for assembly. So thank you for watching, and we shall see you next month.